I remember they asked me in the interview process, like, what are your thoughts on, safety versus the operation? I was like, we're getting rid of that term.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zhao. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Canary Report, where the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I am your host, Michael Zhao, and today we have with us Matt Shaffer. Matt is an accomplished individual, not just in safety, but in life. He has over a dozen years of experience in not only quality and environmental health and safety, but also in operations from airports and construction to corporate environments. He is the director of Vision Technologies, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But they're building, critical infrastructure for healthcare and for higher education and for many, vital institutions, public institutions and otherwise. Safety first mentality is his mindset. And from that perspective, he has thrived and he is continuing to learn. He's continuing to grow. And I am excited to have Matt with us to talk about his journey and share with our listeners not only about Matt Shaffer as a man and as a husband and a father and a guitarist, which we will get to in a moment, but also as a safety leader who is always striving to be better. So, Matt, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Michael. I'm very excited to be here.
So I kicked it off by mentioning your personal journey. But, as I always say, and as I like to begin, this is a personal human podcast. It's not about regulations. It's not about compliance. It's about what it takes to be a man or woman or person that's running safety programs. And that all starts at home and the support systems that we all have at home and in our communities. And so tell us about your personal world. Are you married and family and that kind of thing?
Married. My beautiful wife, Mary Grace, and I, we have a new baby, 3 months old, like this week. But he sleeps better than you can even imagine. So he sleeps from like 9 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And every time I tell people that, they're like, I don't get that, So we're blessed with that one. I also have a 20-year-old daughter. She's at Muhlenberg College. She's studying neuroscience. She is just ridiculously smart and thriving and just, living life and enjoying it and making the best out of every moment. So
it's fantastic. I have he's 21 as of this week, but I have a 21-year-old, a 20-year-old as well. And it's wonderful when they are thriving and really doing well. And he's studying architecture, and he is a guitarist, by the way. So at some point he will see your guitar in the background. And so yeah. So we have to ask. So first of all, it's absolutely beautiful. What kind of guitar do you have there? And tell us about not only that, but you were telling a story earlier about music and
my guitars. So there are a couple more on the wall. This one's Lexi. So I, in the movie Wayne's World, where he would go into the music shop and just at the guitar.
Yeah.
So I have one like that. It's a Fender Stratocaster Lone Star. And I got it when I was 15. I would go into the guitar shop every day and stare at this one. And my mom went in there to get me a Christmas present. She knew I wanted a new guitar. And apparently everybody in the store was like, it's that one. So, so I got the guitar. And guitars have to have a name. So I named it Samantha.
Sure.
And then probably about 10 years later, my brother had a daughter and named her Samantha. And I was like, yeah, after the guitar, clearly. So I had one named Samantha. Right. Yeah. And then my other brother had a daughter named her Laurel. So I was like, well, I got to get a guitar for that one. And I got to get, so each niece I have, I get a brand new guitar. So I'm like, come on, guys, let's go. Let's,
Yeah, let's go. Yeah,
let's
man,
go.
you're pushing family members to procreate. That's for
Yeah.
sure, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I actually, funny enough, because I came in on the tail end of the discussion when you were talking with our producer. I actually thought you were buying these for your nieces, and as they were coming of age. I think it's fantastic that you're taking the opportunity to get yourself another guitar as these. So you, I I wish I had something like that that I could continue to say, but honey, I have to. This is what I do. I mean, look, I can't it would jinx our lovely niece if I didn't get a new
Honey, and my
guitar. I mean,
brother-in-law had
yeah.
a daughter a little over a year ago, and I was like, "What does she look like? A Paul Reed Smith, a Jackson?"
Wonderful, wonderful. So
Yeah.
do you tell me you play them and that you enjoy them? Like, are
Yes.
you still actively playing?
I
And
try. I play them, I enjoy them. Actually, my niece got married a 2 years ago, and that's where I got this one and played it while she walked down the aisle.
Wonderful. Well, that's fantastic. My son is a guitarist, as I mentioned, and he actually, I have pictures of him at 12 in Guitar Center, and and I have many other pictures of him in Guitar Center. It was his personal rewards as well. In fact, now that he turned 21 yesterday, I should probably be thinking about maybe that's something we should look into. So all of that being said, enough on the guitars and music. Let's get to your business journey, and your life journey. So tell us about your, from when you were schooling, and then how you end up where you are today. Like a little bit about your journey.
I love that question, and anytime I interview somebody, that's always the question I start with that, sadly, no little kid grows up saying, "I wanna be a safety professional." And it's sad. They just don't know how awesome it is. But I was working in insurance and financial planning. I actually had like my Series 766. I had my stockbroker license, all that stuff. And you're trying to build a book of business. And when you're young and all your friends are broke, your 1% commission isn't much. So, um, knowing this, I had a friend who was working at an airport as a general manager for a company called Swissport. They do all the ground handling activities and the passenger service and like all that stuff. So everybody running around the airport doesn't work for the airline. They work for companies like Swissport. And they were having a lot of trouble with their workers' compensation costs at Dulles Airport. And they kind of brought me in as a little bit of a consultant saying, "Hey, Matt, you understand workers' compensation laws and regulations, these sorts of things. Do you want to come like help us out?" And I kind of took it on like, yeah, like I'll still build my financial business and then I'll kind of do this on the, to pay the bills in the meantime. So I started doing that. The company at Dulles Airport doubled in size the year I started there, and I took, like a huge, huge reduction. I overhauled their workers' comp process, their return to work program, getting people involved, making sure they're doing modified duty. Nobody was staying home. Everybody was doing something productive for the company and getting their full paycheck. And that was very important to me to make sure they are working, they are getting their full paycheck, and our costs just plummeted. So then they're like, "Matt, you're really good at investigating these injuries. Do you want to like drive around on the airfield and help us investigate aircraft damages?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So that,
Yeah, sounds
yeah,
fun.
yeah,
Sure.
that sounds great. So it evolved from there. I moved from, just doing kind of the DC region and Dulles and DCA, and then started helping out with like the entire country as far as it goes. So I was an area manager finally at Swissport. And I was a little bit of the guy that if your station was on fire, your station was in trouble, I was the one coming in to help you kind of
Sure.
right this ship and figure out
Yeah.
how we can kind of manage the people and get people to buy into safety. Everybody buys into safety. They just don't know how is what I always think.
Sure.
The train.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of my journey, how I got here. And then, moved over to data centers.
So when you were doing that, and you were from how were you saving them
money from a practical perspective. You're coming in, you're doing incident investigation, you're also best practices, you're putting process and procedures in place. How did that save the company money? Did their premiums lower? Did their incident rates allow for them to, or their claims rates go down, and therefore that you were allowed to negotiate better terms? How did that work?
So a little bit more with the return to work program and making that, worthwhile for all parties involved. So a little bit of the issue was that everybody could stay home that got injured. So they got a new contract, and kind of the people were upset that they have, a new boss now, a new company coming in. So everybody was getting hurt and trying to stay home and not work. So we kind of put in the policy of like, well, we have modified duty for you. We're going to give you a job. You're going to have to come to work every day. You're going to have to do something. And you kind of move them around a little bit. You say, no, you're not going to be with your friends. You're going to be on the complete other side of the airport doing something completely different. And for the people that were, you hate to say milking the system, it motivated them to say, I'm fine. Let me go back to work. So now we're not paying doctors' bills, and we're not paying them to stay home, and we're not paying somebody else overtime to do the job that they were hired to do originally as well. And then it kind of made people say, I don't want to go through the process of it, right? I don't need to be injured. I don't need to be staying home. So it kind of set the example of it wasn't good to be injured at work, where before I started there was kind of the preferred method.
It's such a fascinating. I've never had this conversation. So I told you when we started that there's a good chance that although we have subjects, we might go down a different path based on the conversation. There's always a story, right? And I believe that the reality is that there, in any system, in any program, there will be people who take advantage, and you need to disincent the action of taking advantage by having good quality controlled processes that we treat people with kindness and fairness and respect when they are actually injured, but yet you make sure that nobody's taking advantage of the systems when they're not. And it's an interesting dialogue because I hadn't thought about, so we do in our profession, we do a lot of assessments, we do a lot of surveys, we do trainings and things like that. But what you don't realize is that the policies, I try not to talk policy on this podcast because it's kind of a dry subject that most people don't really care about. But having a policy and procedure in place that can keep the services accessible for those who need them, and limit the accessibility for those who are trying to milk them or take advantage of them, is actually part of the job. And it's interesting because I've never thought about it from that perspective until today. You think about it, it's a zero-sum game. People get injured or they don't. You have a risk or you don't. But sometimes the risk is that the policy is too lax, or that the controls are too lax, and giving those who want to take advantage an opportunity.
You find too, a lot of people don't like, what do you do when something goes wrong? People don't think about those policies, those procedures, because that was kind of the mentality when I started with that. They're like, we don't need to know what to do with an injured worker because we're going to prevent all the injuries. And it's like, no, you're not. So what do you do when something goes wrong? How do we prepare for something going wrong? And it's kind of like that, not jinxing it sort of thing. So if we know what to do when there's an injury, that's going to make there not be an injury, because, just putting that out into the world. And
So from a practical perspective, so once you do that, then you have to, inspect what you expect, as the saying goes, right? So you likely have surveys and audits and things like that, and procedural enhancements. How did you operate that in, you were doing broadly many different airports. How are you managing that? Because I'm sure that staffing was challenging, right? I mean, having enough people to do that.
always, yeah. And that's involving the operations and making them part of the safety team. Because one of the big things, you don't want there to be a change in behavior when the safety guy shows up. They joke about like, caw, caw, then everybody's putting on their glasses and they're all like, oh, Matt's here, let's put us on. So it's really kind of creating an environment where they feel empowered to tell you what their struggles are and not yell at them for something that is a near miss, not yell at anybody. That doesn't solve any problems, right? But encouraging them to do inspections appropriately and making sure they understand, like, if you send me a 100% inspection, like, I'm showing up the next day with cake and lunch and balloons, and like, that's amazing. um I've only ever seen one legit one in my career, and like, I remember going to that inspector and be like, did and I'm going to give to here the credit. He was the one at the airport that had the 100% audit. And I asked the guy, he's like, no, he crushed it. I was like, all right then.
So how do you define for those who are not part of the system? What does 100% audit look like?
Did you just pass that? So you have your inspection, you have your forms, are they doing A? Are they doing B? Are they doing C? And just, if they do every single one, yes. And I would always say, we're auditing maybe the leader of this team, not necessarily 100% the function. So, I always ask the question too for people of like, okay, let's say, you're in the data hall and a technician goes up a ladder and he's not wearing his helmet. Well, we got a rule: if you're going up a ladder, you're wearing a helmet 100% of the time. So that's against the criteria. But immediately his foreman comes over and says, hey, you forgot your helmet, put your helmet on, and put someone on. Is that a pass or is that a fail? And for me, I always say that's a pass. You can note down that, hey, the lead had to correct it, but you would pass that on the audit to say the foreman did his job of enforcing the expectation, right? So that's where you kind of have that, are they using spotters properly? Are they looking at the spot? All these things. So, that's another thing too. If they're using the spotter improperly, so the spotter's down on the ground and they're doing whatever hand signals they want to make that mean nothing, and they're not looking at the spotter, well, that's a fail. You're not using the spotter properly. He's there, but you still note that as, okay, that's at risk. And that's something to talk about. And then when you debrief on a site inspection, you want to keep it friendly and make sure you are setting expectation like, this is just what I saw today. There's no need to make a giant fuss out of anything unless I'm going like,
Right.
oh my goodness, you need to stop this right away, right?
Sure.
Sometimes they're, oh
Of
my,
course. Yeah.
but
They're
then,
juggling chains. They're juggling chainsaws on the
yeah,
workplace. Yeah.
exactly.
All right. Yeah.
Right.
But
You have those moments, but for the most part, you're just telling the foreman like, hey,
yeah.
here's what I saw today. This is what I saw. Now, when I come back
Right.
week or tomorrow or whenever, if I see the same thing again, well, now we got twice as a coincidence, and then three times is
Yeah.
where you start seeing a pattern. And then we're going to work together to see how we can solve this issue. And
Right.
that's so huge for me. When I started at Vision, I remember they asked me in the interview process, like, what are your thoughts on, safety versus the operation? I was like, we're getting rid of that term. So I told my mom in there, I was like, and is safety versus, like, we're going to go old school. You got to drop down and give me 5 push-ups. We're getting rid of that term 100%. We're with the operation. We're your support. We're here to help and build the environment where they will be happy that safety's coming, and they will reach out to us. I always love my favorite. I had a foreman, Ali. He would get excited when I came because he knew, he's like, Matt will find something wrong every single time. I never found the same thing twice on his site, but he would almost be excited to see what I could find on his site. He knew there'd be something, and you could see just the anticipation of what'd you find today, and correct it every single time.
But that is such a statement and a reflection of your leadership and who you are as a person, because you opened up by saying our goal is to work with you to be better. This is not a situation of putting somebody down, demoting, or worse, firing. These are things that are there's no such thing, as you say, there's no such thing as, well, there's one of a perfect risk environment. Yeah. Well, I now have heard one in my entire career. But that being said, there's a lot of victim shaming in this industry, and there's also a lot of leadership shaming of, that everybody tries to do the best that they can do. Nobody goes to work every morning and say, I'm trying to fail, or I want my people to be unsafe. And so some of the actions that I hear that people often implement don't support that message, that intent to do good, which I think everybody has good intent. If you don't, you probably shouldn't be working at that company, period, let alone leading people. So along those lines, it's such an interesting statement, because one of the things that we struggle with at Yellowbird is when we roll out, like we did a recent inspection program for a group, and it was like 250 locations, and we did them quickly. We did them in like 71 days. It was very efficient. We got great ratings. The customer was thrilled. It was wonderful. But I always say expectation setting on how to fill a survey. What does pass fail look like? And it's interesting that you should say what you did regarding that helmet example of going up on a ladder, and you see somebody who's going up on a ladder, but the foreman runs over and says, "Hey, you go and put your helmet on." "Oh yeah, boss, sorry, I forgot." You know what? And that's a pass. How do you communicate that to a third party who's going out, and even not a third party, to your own people internally? Like, you have 5, 10 people going and doing that inspection. Would they all have said that was a pass? Or would three or four of them said, no, he went up on that ladder without a helmet? That's a not pass.
Yeah, I have them on my team now. That's a fail for them. But it's the consistency of their kind of operation. So this is their standard. This is how they grade it, and that's fine. And we're putting notes. You put notes in there, and you kind of look at them. So, like, when I would say that's a pass, I would put, oh, he went up on there, but the foreman corrected it right away. Pass, right? And somebody also put a fail, but the foreman corrected it right away. Fail.
If they note that.
If they note that, right, which they should.
They should, but that's the thing. Was the corrective action that happened in the process? I saw a person on a ladder without a helmet, forgetting to say, but the foreman corrected it right away. So those are those moments, right? It's like, let's make sure we give all the detail, right? So please keep going. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
But it's the consistency of talking with your team and talking with the foremans afterwards. So yeah, we're compiling data. We want to get that information. We want to try to be very consistent with the data that we're gathering so that it is accurate, right? But the more important part is going up to the foreman and saying, great job on correcting that right when you saw it, and getting them to start looking for those sorts of things and start making the conversation about safety a friendly conversation. And, everybody looks at like the safety guys, he's the mean, angry, yelling about PPE all the time. And it's like, no, hey, you forgot your safety glasses. Thanks. And that's the conversation we're creating. And that's what I tell my team to create those conversations.
It's so interesting you should say that, because a lot of the time, folks who are not as sophisticated as yourself, or those who want us to do create the assessment, create the survey for them, or give us a sample of what you feel a mock OSHA inspection should look like. We do have templates. We always hope that our customer is going to make it their own, and so that you're looking for the things that are important to you. But one of the things that I'm adamant about internally is, when we do a template, we need to do a safety excellence template that highlights the great, the 98% that people did wonderfully, that I walked around and say, that's one of the things that we're focused on as a company with everything that we're doing. We have so much data that I can tell somebody where they rank in comparison to their peers. Say, you know what, just so you know, your site I know it looks like you guys were, in the 80th percentile on this particular area, but you're in the 98th percentile of the 400 locations that we've seen this month. And that is important. That's good.
It's so interesting. So yesterday I was doing my quarterly business review, and the president of the company, he's a new president to Vision. He's like, yeah, but okay, we're looking at, because I put in there, like, here's our top three risks, right? Here's what we're seeing in our inspections. He's like, yeah, but what are we doing good? Like, are we telling them what they're doing right? I'm like, well, yeah, when we debrief them, we're telling them the good too. And, we're implementing reward programs, safe site of the month. We're trying to make sure we are telling them, here's your attaboys as well.
And by the way, kudos to your new president for bringing that up and asking that question. It says a lot about your leadership by that he asked that, because that says who he is as an individual and as a person and a leader, that he wants to make sure people are being recognized for the good they're doing, which is such a refreshing. A lot of people dread talking to their presidents or CEOs because all they do is say, tell me the bad, tell me what we're doing wrong, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, don't you want to know all the good that we're doing too? No, that's not, yeah. How can we be better? How can we be better? It's like, well, we'll always be better. You're right.
Yeah, and this is my first quarterly review with him, and so there's a little bit more nervousness on that. And then he's saying stuff like that. I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna like you. You have the right attitude towards safety, and I want to give Vision so much credit about their attitude towards safety. I mean, this is an organization that really they want a good safety program. They are buying into it. They're not like, we have you because we need to have you. No, they're like, how can we do better? Like, tell us, how do we change the culture here to think about safety more? And how do we kind of involve that in our day-to-day processes and lives? And I've never worked with an organization that was more positive towards a safety program than Vision. It is amazing.
So tell me a little bit more about Vision as a company. We didn't really go too deep into. I mentioned them in my intro. We talked about the airport, but Vision. So you left the airport services side of the house and you went over to Vision. So how long have you been there? Tell us about that a little bit.
I've been with Vision for about 9 months now, a little over 9 months. So I was a recent move to come over and be with Vision. Um, and what we do is we do mostly low voltage. We're doing a lot in data centers, critical infrastructure, security, cameras, audio visual stuff. We do a lot with that. So most of it is just kind of wiring the day two stuff in data centers, which is fun and unique and very interesting. But then there's cool stuff that we're doing too. Like, we just did at a university, like putting up a 20-foot screen. And you know, y- you get these kind of projects and they're like, Matt, how do we put up a 20-foot screen safely? And you're like, I'm going to like this meeting. This one's going to be fun. It's going to be challenging. You kind of, you get to do the risk assessments that you want to do with some of these cool projects.
Sure. It's interesting because I'm going to be a little self-serving here, Matt. I'm going to just tell you that right now. But one of the things with Yober that I really value and I think is interesting or people are leaning towards with us is in that environment, you may be seeing something you've never seen before, even as a leader and as a team. And the ability to go on to, to a place like us and say, I need somebody who can do a fall from heights program for putting a 20-foot screen up. And honestly, the data that we have on our pros, I mean, I've got 7,000 people on the platform. Like I could probably get you somebody from that literally hung screens in stadiums all day, every day for years and years in their safety program. Right. And it's just interesting because that's the one thing that people don't realize. They think safety is all the same and every single situation has its own variable of risk. And sometimes you just need to bring in a trainer to say, okay, let's train you guys up on how to do, 100 foot in the air, hanging of of a screen safely. Right.
And that's, safety is the same, but safety isn't the same. And I love how there's always something new to it. But I got a lot when I was changing industries going from aviation to data centers, they're like, well, you don't know construction. I'm like, I know safety. Like if I was an accountant in the airport industry and was coming to be an accountant at data centers, you'd be like, you don't know construction accounting. It's like, I know accounting. I know how to look at risk and say, what the heck's going to go wrong? And I actually think bringing in people from different industries brings in fresher eyes because you get used to it. So somebody who knows safety but has never seen this problem before is going to look at it from a totally different perspective and is going to ask the question you never thought of. And that's why we always, preach about diverse risk assessment teams. When you're looking at hazard, you want the baseline technician, you want the safety manager, you want the client on board, you want all these people because somebody's going to ask that silly question. That's the thing with root cause analysis. Somebody's going to ask that silly question that's going to really lead down to what you need to know. And that's why you bring the diversity in.
It's such a great point. It's so interesting because I often say that the sad part about the industry is because it's under resourced, and there's a lot of asking of people to do self-graded tests because you can't afford to have somebody go out to these locations normally before us, and even with us at times. There's budgets are budgets, and sometimes things are tight. But the reality is that when you ask somebody who's responsible, who's the foreman of a site, to do your safety assessment, the chances of getting a true view of of things that are concerning because they don't want to look bad is difficult. And it's just human nature. It's human nature. And we all would do the same thing. The other piece of the equation that I think is fascinating is when you think about what we do for a living. This is my fourth tech company, and this is my first venture capital backed company. And so we've raised VC and outside parties. And one of the things you said something there that resonated with me, which is safety is safety. I've had so many VCs and investors say, you need to pick a vertical. What vertical are you in? And I said, I'm in the safety vertical. And they go, no. Are you construction? Are you logistics? Are you warehousing? Are you wiring? I'm like, no, I serve the safety industry. And they don't see it as an industry. They don't see it as like, it is a universal. It's like saying I'm in the medical industry. Well, do you do medicine for people who do construction, or do you do medicine for people who do office work? I'm like, I'm a doctor. I do medicine for human beings. And it's such an interesting statement that you make there because I don't think a lot of people understand that this is an industry of risk and understanding. And even though you have to learn the nuances, there's still principles that we all stand behind.
Yeah, and that's going to be the same, yeah. If you go from one hospital to another hospital as a doctor, there's things that are different. You're going to learn them. You're going to be just fine.
Exactly. So on your team, what does your team look like?
What does my team look like? Oh, they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that.
They're beautiful people.
Beautiful
people. Beautiful people. Well, good. I'm glad that you opened an HR issue for how you hire. No.
So I have I got one position open for senior safety manager. I have two fantastic senior safety managers that combine just years and years of experience. I have a few kind of safety managers that manage a few different sites. And then I have a bunch of coordinators. I think I have around 8 or 9 coordinators now. Sometimes we bring them in temporarily, just kind of in for a couple of weeks or so. But we want to make sure we're all kind of working together and on the same page. So that's where my team's at right now.
And by the way, truth be told, I have no idea if you're a customer of ours or not. It doesn't matter to me. When I set these things up, I actually have no idea if you're doing business with us. But you mentioned like 2 or 3 things you could use Yelbird for. So if you're not using us for filling these roles or these services, reach out to whoever is your contact here. I'm just saying that because I'm like, okay, I'd be a horrible CEO if I didn't at least acknowledge that, we can help you with that coordinator and for that manager role. So
I don't mind
So
pitching. I came from insurance sales, so
Yeah,
pitch.
I know, I get it, but it's not the intent. It's not the intention of this podcast. So it, from a geography perspective, and then I'll let you wrap here pretty soon. But from a geography perspective, where are you guys covering? Are you geographically an organization? Are you national? Are you international?
So,
What do you guys do?
we are national. We might have some international stuff, but not much. But we are all over the place. So, uh, anything you do online goes through Northern Virginia. That's just a fact of life. That's where all the data centers are. So we're primarily based out of the Mid-Atlantic region. We have a bunch of stuff in the South. So we have a lot of stuff down there, and then Ohio is kind of booming now. So those are our three kind of major areas. And moving west, we have some stuff, California, Nevada, those areas. We have a bunch of stuff. So we're all over the.
Yeah, so you get the fun of dealing with Cal OSHA and some of the other OSHA locations that need to have unique, qualified people who understand that market.
Yep, that's a whole different therapy session. That's
Oh no, it's not. It's quite easy. Just let us help you out. So now you gave me the opportunity to pitch, and look how that goes. Let's just try and bring it back in line, Mike. Sorry about that. So it's funny because my background is actually in data centers, and I was part of one of the founding internet companies in the '90s. So I know Tyson's Corner. I know Tyson's Corner very well. I know exactly when you said that where you were talking about. Because I used to build data centers out there a long time ago. So yeah, we can share it over a whiskey and cigar at some point.
yeah, absolutely. It is a booming area for data centers, and I pretty much grew up in
Yes.
Northern Virginia, and
Yes.
there was nothing. Out
There,
there
wa-
now
there
it's
was,
all
and
developed.
now there is. Well,
Mhm.
yeah, that's the world we live in, and there's
Yeah.
more data centers coming. You're in a good market, you're in a good industry because I don't think they can build data centers fast enough. And we
No.
do a ton. We do a ton of data center, safety people like
Mhm.
in the centers for the big names that are building them. I won't put them
The
out there right
client.
now on the pod.
Yeah.
Yeah, the client,
You have to say the
but
client or the
the
customer.
client.
Yeah,
Yes,
client.
yes,
And then they put their
yeah,
name on the side of the building.
yes,
You
yeah.
you
People
you
will figure out, but I can't say who it is.
Mhm.
But it's perfectly fine because they are good clients and we are appreciative of them.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up, I will ask you one last question as we go into the holidays. And I always like to ask this because we'll be doing a mashup around these, but I'm going to put it out here right now because we're already in November for the recording. I don't know when this gets released, but what are you grateful and thankful for this holiday season?
I'm just grateful for my family so much. My wife, my support system, my son, my daughter, my parents, all the love that is surrounded, that I'm surrounded by. That's really what I'm most grateful for.
It's fantastic, man. I think people are going to feel what I feel on this podcast, which is you are a genuinely warm and kind human being. And I wish more people carried themselves the way that you do. And thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I look forward to hearing you play that guitar at some point. And I want to make sure that if you're ever in this neck of the woods in Phoenix, you come look me up. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you, Michael. It's my pleasure.
That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.